Hey, what's up, everyone? And thank you so much for dropping in to another episode of the Path to Freedom podcast. This is episode 127. And today I'm joined by Michael DeLon. Michael is the founder and CEO of the Paperback Expert, where he specializes in helping small business owners write books that are going to help them grow their client base and grow their business for many years to come. Michael and I connected. I had a chance to be a guest on his podcast, Expert Speak. Fantastic podcast where he interviews all different types of experts. We've got a link to that podcast in the show notes. I highly recommend that people go and check out Michael's podcast. But in doing so, I got to learn a little bit about, his core business, Paperback Experts, and the services that he provides to business owners. And I was a little skeptical at first. I'm thinking, books, that's great. I love to read. I've always read, but it's 2023, who's really still writing books and making that a part of their core marketing strategy, right? We live in such a digital world, but in talking with Michael and learning more about, how he's able to help his clients and some case studies from all different types of clients, right? I mean, he goes into some examples in this episode of, clients that you would never imagine, having a need to write a book because of the type of business that they're in. But in doing that, how it benefited their business in a massive way. So really cool conversation here with Michael. I love what he's doing in helping his clients, these small business owners, put out a book that tells their story, that helps to differentiate their business from, competitors that they may have. So without further ado, let's drop in with Michael DeLon of Paperback Experts.
Wes, you are welcome. I'm so glad to be here. I always just love hanging out with you and having conversations around just life and business. So it's going to be a great chat.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun getting to know you a little bit. And, first I want to make sure we kind of plug this. You have a podcast as well, which is how we initially connected. And I had the great opportunity to come and be a guest on your podcast. So tell us a little bit about the podcast and where people can find it. And then we'll move into, the business itself.
Yeah, that's awesome. So my podcast is Experts Speak. And you can find it, everywhere, Apple, iTunes, whatever. We're everywhere. You can also go to paperbackexpert.com. It's there. But what I do is I bring experts on. And an expert to me, Wes, is really somebody who's doing business and they've been in business for about a year. I mean, because you are an expert at what you do, I want to expose you to a larger audience and give you a great platform from which you can continue to market. But Experts Speak is my podcast. Love for you to listen to it.
Yeah, we'll put some links in the show notes to make it easy for people to find, but really cool concept for a podcast, all different types of guests in terms of, what they do and their expertise. So, pretty well-rounded, I would say. But so you've got the podcast, which we just talked about. And then, as I mentioned earlier, you're the founder and CEO of Paperback Expert. What is Paperback Expert?
Yeah, so we are a publishing company for small business owners. We help experts create a book without writing a word, promote them to be an Amazon best-selling author, and then teach them and give them marketing systems and strategies so they can actually turn their book into money by gaining clients, getting referrals, and growing revenue.
So it's turnkey is what you're saying. It's if you are a small business owner, entrepreneur, you thought about writing a book, probably like myself, thought about it many times. 30 seconds into that, I'm like, I don't even know where to start. And I don't have the time to learn how to go and write a book. So you're handling that part of it. You've got this, it sounds like kind of formula figured out for, how to make sure it gets onto the Amazon bestsellers list, which I'm sure is huge from just a exposure standpoint, visibility. And then the other thing that I think is really interesting, and I would venture to say different than what maybe some other companies that are kind of ghostwriting or putting, helping people put out books, you've got the back end support, right? Because I imagine there's a lot of people out there that put a lot of time, money, and energy into writing a book. and then they got it and they didn't know what to do with it after that. And it didn't really do anything other than, like, they had fun for a few weeks handing it out to friends and family saying, hey, I wrote a book, here's a free copy. So I think that's incredibly valuable, right? Because if someone's going to go to the lengths of, again, putting in the time, money, and energy to write a book, even if it's with, a great turnkey system and company helping you like yours, it's, you want to see some sort of an ROI on that.
Oh, 100%. And in fact, that's where we were in the early years of our company, is we'd publish books and our clients would come back to us and say, hey, my book's on Amazon, looks great. What do I do with it? And my background's in marketing. And I thought, well, it's obvious what you do with it, but our clients didn't understand that. So I started building systems, step-by-step guides, video assisted, that we give our clients to go, here are a number of ways to use your book in every aspect of your business, from lead generation to conversion to referrals to you name it. A book works there. And our systems, we're not an ad agency, meaning you're not paying me to run your ads and things. I'm giving you systems that are proven that we use in our business every day because we know they work. And that's why we back up our program with the 2-year double your money back guarantee, because I know that when you do what I tell you to do, you're going to grow your business.
I love that. I mean, you're putting your money where your mouth is, right? With this double your money guarantee. You mentioned your background in marketing, definitely want to talk more about Paperback Expert, how you guys do what you do, who should be thinking about, having a book and, how it could benefit them. But, I think your background is an important part of, understanding why Paperback Expert is as successful as it is. So talk to us a little bit about, how you got to this point. Was there a transition into owning your own business? Have you always kind of been, more entrepreneurial? What's kind of the coming up story look like?
Yeah, that's great. Give me about 3 minutes. I'll tell you the whole thing. Okay.
All
so
right,
hang on.
let's go.
So first of all, I'm a follower of Christ. Okay. I've been married for 33 years. My wife and I got married in 1990.
Wow.
And we've got, now we've got 4 kids, 2 sons and 2 adopted daughters. We did foster care for 8 years, fostered about 25 kids.
Wow.
But so we got married in 90. Okay. My wife and I, first 5 years of our marriage were like this, Wes. We just fought because we're complete opposites. And Jill and I both grew up in church, but nobody ever taught us how to be married. And so after 5 years of conflict, we ended up going to a marriage conference with a ministry called Family Life.
Okay.
And we sat in a ballroom for a weekend, and they unpacked for us God's blueprints for marriage. I didn't know he had any blueprints. So we took his blueprints, we started applying them, and our marriage started getting better. And so that happened through the 90s. Okay. During the 90s, I was in Christian radio, sales and marketing.
Okay.
So after, and I did that for about 9.5 years through the 90s. After the first 2 years of selling Christian radio, Wes, I realized nobody wants to buy Christian radio. What they want is to sell their products and services.
Yeah.
And so that was a light bulb moment for me. And I decided I was at a fork in the road. I could either choose to become really good at selling or really good at marketing. So I chose marketing, and I bought the books. I followed the gurus. I went to the conferences to learn how to do marketing for small business owners.
Okay.
Because it's different than how Tesla and Apple market.
Very different.
So because of what I've learned and how I applied it, my business started growing because my clients would sell more things, right? And so that was the 90s. At the end of the 90s, God led me out of Christian radio into a startup.com back when Amazon was just getting started.
Wow.
And I started selling at websites and banner ads to hospitals and car dealerships in my community who they didn't know what the internet was.
Yeah, early.
And that company was ahead of its time. That means they went bankrupt.
A little too far ahead.
Exactly.
They weren't quite there in the sweet spot to hit the .com boom.
That's right.
They were a little too early.
So I found myself standing in my living room at home, looking up at the ceiling going, God, what am I supposed to do now? And because of our background with that ministry called Family Life and where we were, God spoke to my heart. He says, Michael, I want you to ministry to families, and I want you at Family Life. Great. So we came down to Little Rock, Arkansas after 2 years of raising our financial support because we were missionaries. They weren't paying us. And I thought I hit nirvana, Wes. I thought I was in a job I was going to be for the rest of my life, helping build marriages and families for Christ. And I climbed the corporate ladder. 6 years later, I'm on the leadership team of that ministry. And then we started going through corporate reorganizations. And after the third reorganizational chart was laid out, my name was no longer on the leadership team. And so they started shuffling me around the ministry to do different things. And that was the beginning of a 2-year prison term for me. Prison meaning I was in a job that I hated at a ministry I loved. And the life was just getting sucked out of me. So after 2 years, I'd had it. I talked to my wife, Jill. I prayed. I said, God, I got to get out of this place. And he said, what do you want to do? I said, I want to go help small business owners with marketing because they struggle with it. They hate it. And I love it. And he said, go. So on January 1st of 2013, I escaped from prison. I left the ministry, started a marketing consulting firm, and I took my first client, helped him break through some barriers. He'd refer me to you, Wes. And I'd call you. I said, Wes, I think I can help you grow your business. You'd meet with me. We'd have a great conversation. Somewhere in that talk, you'd say, Michael, what have you done in the last few years? Who else have you helped? And I'd say, well, I've helped build marriages and families at Family Life. And you'd say, Michael, that's honorable. Way to go. Oh, look at the time. I've got another appointment coming up. And you'd usher me out the door. And I wasn't getting any clients. And I thought, okay, I got to fix this. So I went to my church, second floor. I was pacing the hallways. I said, God, how do I help Wes? Because I know I can. And he gave me this idea. He says, why don't you take all of your ideas and strategies and put them in a book? And so I did. I wrote my first book, Wes, on marketing back in 2013. Then I would call you, set an appointment. I'd mail a copy of my book to you. A week later, I'd walk into your office for our meeting, and there it was. My book was on your desk, dog-eared, highlighted, underlined. You'd read my book. And in that meeting, you'd say, now, Michael, in your book, you said, how do you help me do that? And you'd hire me. And the next person hired. And I started gaining clients like crazy. And I thought, oh, this is really cool from a marketing perspective. Why don't business owners do this?
Right.
Well, Wes, you know how hard it is to write a book. I mean, this thing took months.
I was going to ask, how long did it take you to write? Because I'm assuming you didn't have any experience in writing a book.
Zero. I knew nothing about writing a book. So it took us about 7 months to get this thing written, created, published. I had to do all the writing, editing. I had to find designers for the cover. I had to figure out.
You did it all, soup to nuts. On that
did
first one.
Everything, right?
Yeah.
So what I learned is that. All right, let me ask you the question. This is the only trick question of the day. What changed between the first meeting I had with you and the second meeting I had with you?
Credibility.
Credibility. It's how you thought of me. When you got a copy of my book, you instantly thought of me as an expert in marketing.
Yeah.
And so when I walked in your office, you had pen in hand, ready to take down the solutions I was going to give you. That changed everything in my business and life. And that planted the seed that today is Paperback Expert, because I'm convinced that every business owner is an expert at what they do. They're just not communicating it in a way that their audience sees that.
Yeah.
And when you're an author, it changes everything in how somebody perceives you. And so that started Paperback Expert back 2013, so 11 years ago now. And we've helped hundreds of business owners become Amazon bestselling authors and multiply the impact they're making and generate more revenue and serve more people by being an author. So
that's amazing. It's a great story. A lot of things that I think we could kind of unpack there. I guess one thing, and you've already talked about your faith in Christ.
Yeah.
But I imagine still, that was a very scary time,
Totally.
You making that decision to, I guess even back from when you were selling radio to go into, more of a ministry, missionary type role, right? Where I'm assuming there was no guarantee of a certain amount of income. And then to even go from that to, hey, I'm going to start this business, how did you get through that? You know, I imagine your faith was a big part of it, but
Huge.
you know, what was that experience like?
Yeah. So it's my faith in Christ, knowing that at the end of the day, God is my provider. And I always say, even today, my business is God's, right? God has promised in the Bible to provide for me. He has never promised to provide for me through my business.
Mm.
So he can take this at any time, right? But I know he's faithful. So number one, trusting him. Number two, having a great spouse who supports me in all my wacky ideas and efforts. That is huge.
I can
Um,
relate to that one.
oh, I tell you. But then walking by faith and believing that God has created me with some abilities and some talents. And in Matthew 25, we've got the parable of the talents, the guy who gets 2 and the guy who gets 4 and the guy who gets 5 or whatever. And I've always wanted to be that 5-talent guy that at the end of the day, when I stand toe to toe with Jesus, he looks at me and says, Michael, I gave you skills, talents, abilities. Well done. And I think we do that by stepping out of our comfort zone and talk. I guess I realized in Christian radio, business owners struggle. They're always looking for the next thing. Well, is cable advertising it, or is radio it, or is billboard it, or is this it, or that it? Then this thing called the internet happened, and oh my goodness. But at the end of the day, marketing happens based on fundamental principles. And that's what I focus on. And it was just taking steps to go from Christian radio. Yeah. Was there any security in that? Well, no. It was the security of me getting out and doing it and talking with people and having a great offer. It was going into ministry, trusting God to provide in a way that he was just totally amazing. And then leaving that to come to my business, there really is no difference in anything I've ever done. It's always, they understand that God's my provider, but I got to get out of my, somebody told me years ago, God provides food for the birds every day, but they have to get out of their nest to go find it.
I like that. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
That's really
really cool. And I think great advice, you know, for anyone that's, you know, in a similar position or, you know, may face a similar transition in the future as to, you know, how they can kind of push through that, because it is scary. And you know, you really gotta get out of your comfort zone if you want to,
here's the phrase that hammers me. Are you gonna walk by faith, or are you going to live in fear? It's a choice we all make.
Yeah, so good. So good. So with Paperback Expert, have you kind of identified a niche in terms of like the types of business owners you're really able to help? Like, who should be thinking about, you know, writing a book? Are there some business owners that are probably going to benefit from it more than others?
You know, it's funny. Most people would think the answer would be yes, but in reality, the answer is no. So we've worked in the last 11 years with, financial advisors and attorneys. We've done books for roofing companies. We did a book for, most business owners look at themselves, they're in very competitive markets, right? And if you're not saying something different, you look like, I call you a coffee bean, right? You look and smell just like everybody else. And we had a coffee bean come to me a few years ago, and he's a home inspector. Now, I know you've got a house. Do you remember the name of the home inspector?
Not at all.
No, nobody knows this guy, right? My guy came to me, and I'm getting to the answer because a book is for any expert. This guy is an expert at home inspecting, but he's a coffee bean. And I said, all right, Chris, what do you do for fun, nights and weekends? And he's like, well, on weekends, I'm a high school football referee. And I've got my team, and we do. And he lit up, and he started telling me how being a referee is just like home inspecting, because there are rules and rule books and flags. And I said, really? So we took that, and we published his book. It's called The Official Guide to Home Inspections. But we branded him as Chris Perry, America's home inspection referee. Now, when Chris goes into the realtor's offices to get referrals and things, he's wearing his uniform. When he goes on home inspections, he's in his uniform. When he finds a problem with your house, he puts a yellow flag on it.
Was he doing all this before the book?
Oh, none of it.
None
He
of
had
it.
never thought about connecting the dots. That's what we do. So if a home inspector can become an author and have now price elasticity, which means Chris charges a lot more for home inspections than everybody else because he's the only one in America who does this.
Yeah.
He changed how people think about him because he's an author, and we connected those dots and told the story. So don't ever think the industry that you're in isn't fit for you doing a book, because here's the marketing principle, Wes. People buy you more than what you do. Okay. I can hire any home inspector, but I want America's home inspection referee, and I'm willing to pay more for that. So it doesn't matter what industry you're in, you should be an author to make a bigger impact.
Yeah, that's I would have never thought a home inspector, having a book could really move the needle that much for them. So yeah, I was kind of expecting the answer to be that there's some businesses that it just doesn't make as much sense for. But no, I see your point. So let's kind of use my business a little bit as a case study, because you and I have talked about me possibly putting a book out. I think it's something that could make a lot of sense for the line of work that I'm in franchise consulting. I think my personal story in terms of my wife and I owning franchise businesses ourselves, and what that's kind of done for our family in terms of financial resources, but also more control of our time and really our lifestyle, especially with young kids. I think there's a story there to tell that could really help open some other people's eyes to the potential benefits of franchise ownership, and how I'm in a position to help. So just so the audience has kind of a sense of it, what would the process look like? So we agree, hey, we're going to do this, I sign a contract or whatever, you're going to help me write a book. So where do we start? What does that kind of look like?
Great question. First few weeks are me and you working together to come up with what I call that big idea. What is your book title? What is your positioning, right?
Mm-hmm.
America's Home Inspection Referee. What is it about you? What's your story? What's your angle that's going to make the rest of the book come through? So that's the first, usually 30 days of working with me, because that's my God-given gift, is to find that. Once we have that in place, then we bring one of our professional writers to the table, and they start working with you through Zoom calls about an hour a week. And you start building the outline of your book first. Takes about 3 to 4 weeks. And here's the thing, Wes, you've got everything in your head that you need to create your book.
Yeah.
Our job is to get it out of you through questions
and organize
it, structure it. And so we build the outline. Once the outline's done, then we take you through our speak to write process, where that same writer is just asking you questions about that outline to say, okay, Wes, let's talk about, what were you feeling when you first thought about buying your first franchise? Tell us about that. Well, you can talk about that for the next 30 minutes, right? We're recording everything, and we do that all the way through the outline. So you are speaking to write your book in a very guided way. We record everything. And then our writer, when you've recorded your entire book through the entire outline, our writer then transcribes that and takes what you said, your words, and they massage your words into the manuscript of your book.
Yeah.
We send you a couple chapters to make sure we've captured your tone, your voice, your message, your point. And when you look at that and you say, yes, if the rest of my book was written like this, I am a happy camper. Then our writer goes back and they finish the rest of your manuscript. You get to approve it. And then we create a stunning cover. We do all the editing, design. We do everything. Then we publish you to Amazon, Kindle, paperback, PDF, everything. We do everything that's needed except the content. That's you, but we draw that out of you through conversation. So if you can talk about your business, you can become an author.
Yeah, I think it's so important that you have, what sounds like a great process to really capture,
Oh,
the voice of, the author,
100%.
right?
Yeah.
Because that would be one of my concerns with essentially delegating the writing of a book. While I know nothing about writing a book,
Yeah.
I could see myself being a little bit hesitant to hand it off to someone else because it just may not come across the
Yeah.
way that I want it to. And I think, what you said earlier, I agree so much with, which is, people are buying into you, not
Yeah.
necessarily what you're doing. In the world of franchise consulting, there's hundreds, if not, 1,000+ franchise consultants out there, right?
Yeah.
We're all essentially doing the same thing. And I'm even part of a network of consultants, right? Where, we kind of share resources and we collectively, vet franchise brands that we're confident in working with. And, we get together a couple times a year for conferences and we meet with a lot of the brands that we work with, but we usually spend a day and a half or so, just us consultants, sharing best practices. And it's amazing to me how open everyone always is in terms of, hey, this is what I'm doing, this is what's working well. I was able to, really explain this to someone this way, and it seemed to really resonate with them. Like we're kind of an open book with each other, even though technically we're all competing against each other, right? Because we're all fishing in
Right.
the same pond in terms of,
Yeah.
people out there that we could help advise on a franchise. And I think we all just understand that, like, if I had exactly the way I run my business written down in a playbook,
Yeah.
word for word, and handed it to someone else, they're not going to be able to, replicate exactly what I do because they're not me, and vice versa. So I think, making sure to capture that in a book is huge. Um, If you're listening to this podcast, then there's a good chance that you're looking to create more freedom in your own life. There's also a good chance that you realize that owning your own business can be a great way to take more control of your livelihood and create more of that freedom that we're all looking for. Also, if you've been listening to the show for a while, you realize that I specialize in franchise ownership. In addition to owning franchise businesses myself, I have a franchise consulting firm, Path to Freedom, where I help people navigate what is typically an overwhelming process of understanding franchising, identifying specific franchise companies that could be a fit, and then conducting the due diligence in a thorough and efficient manner with those franchise brands. My whole purpose here is to leverage my experience working for franchisors, owning franchises myself, and how we've been able to use that to create more freedom in our lives and help you determine if that could be a path that makes sense for you as well. So if any of this sounds interesting, if you've considered business ownership in the past, whether you've explored franchising specifically or not, I'd love to connect with you. I'd love to learn more about you and what it is that you're working towards in your life and determine if I may be in a position to help. A great starting point is the link below in the show notes, which will take you to a short form to fill out, and you'll receive a free copy of an ebook that I've put together, The 7 Steps to Freedom Through Franchise Ownership. That'll also get us connected, and I'd love to set up an introductory call where I can explain a little bit more about the process that I use to help people determine if franchise ownership could be a great way to start charting their own path to freedom. So click the link below in the show notes, receive the ebook, and let's get connected. I'd love to hear from you. So run me through the timeline again, right? To essentially get to the point where you have a finished book, um,
Yep.
prior to publishing, what does that
Yeah.
timeline look like?
It can be as fast as 4 months on
Okay.
our accelerated program. Traditionally and typically, it takes about 6 to 8 months.
Okay.
If you just follow the process, that's clarifying your message, building the outline, recording, formatting, everything about that long, then your book's published, and then we make you an Amazon best-selling author. So but we've created our process for busy entrepreneurs. So in that time frame, US are going to have less than 24 clock hours invested in the book.
Right.
because it just, so we leverage your time, because again, you can talk about this all day long. We just know how to get the information out. Then we have hundreds of hours in it, writing and rewriting and all of that. But if you look at about, 6 to 8 months from today to when you're a best-selling author, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, that is pretty cool. So
And
I'm sure you don't want to give away too much of the secret sauce, but what happens after the book's finished, it's edited, you
yep,
go to publishing, because if I understand correctly, you're essentially able to guarantee that you hit the Amazon bestsellers list. So how is
absolutely.
that doable?
Yeah, everybody asked me that. I feel like Colonel Sanders. Everybody asks, "How do you make that chicken? What's that secret recipe?"
Yeah, or
And
the wizard behind the curtain or whatever.
exactly, yeah. And the reality is, we've got a large staff who focuses on it. We understand what Amazon's looking for. They look at about 6 different components as a book, comes up the level from being 34,000 to number 1. And we do press releases, we do social media posts, we do emails to about 10,000 people in our network, all in a very focused period of time. We know what categories to choose. We have to do all of that research as we're getting ready to publish your book, so that we can dominate the promotion over a short period of time to get your book up there. And that's why we can guarantee you'll be an Amazon best-selling author.
Love it. What else are you advising, your clients to do once the book is published, once they've hit the bestseller list?
Yep.
What is kind of that playbook? Again, you don't have to go into too much
Yeah.
detail, obviously, but what would I do once I had a book
Yep.
ready to start sharing with people?
So you would receive about 10 to 12 of our playbooks. Our playbooks are step-by-step guides, video assisted, of what to do with your book. Okay, so a couple examples. One, make sure your book is on your website as a free download. Okay, I'm a big proponent of free. I want you to get your book in the hands of everybody who's part of your audience. Okay, so number one, that would be one playbook. The other playbook, I'm holding up Lynn's book. She's a financial advisor up in Canada. We just made her an international best-selling author. And she asked me that question: what do I do now? I said, Lynn, do you have a database, an email list, or whatever? She's like, well, yeah, I've got about 600 people on my list. I said, great. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to send an email out. Here's the subject line, Lynn: don't buy my book. They open up the email, and she says, I want to give you a free copy of my brand new Amazon best-selling book, Retire on Purpose. Just tell me where to mail it. I'll have it to you in a couple of days. She had 80 people respond to that and request her book. She mailed them out. I talked with her 3 weeks later, and she said, Michael, I've already had 2 people walk into my office with my book in hand that they received, saying, we want to work with you. She said, the commissions I'm going to earn from those 2 people have already paid for my book.
There you
The
go.
rest is gravy. That's a marketing system that we've given her. And that's just one of multiple emails, headlines, and things that we've sent her. I mean, if you got an email from me saying, don't buy my book, are you going to open that if you know me? Absolutely you are, right?
Yeah.
So that's how we approach marketing. It's a system that now she could use that same email, Wes, 3 months from now, 6 months from now, 8 months from now, and it will work just as well every time. So we provide our clients with these types of systems that help them bond emotionally with their audience, build trust, so it shortens the sales cycle and they can convert more clients. And now, all right, everybody loves referrals, right? Can I give you one on referrals?
Please.
I talk to business owners all the time. I'm like, do you like referrals? Yeah. How do you get them? Well, they just happen. It's like nobody has a system for referrals. So now that you're an author and you've just served your client doing whatever, let's say it's a Lynn, and she just put together your great financial plan and you're just stoked. You're so happy. Wes, would you do me a favor? Well, sure. What can I do for you? You probably don't know this, but most of my clients don't come from all the marketing we do and everything. They come from our referrals from our happy clients. It would mean a lot to me. Would you do me a favor? Would you take 3 or 4 or 5 copies of my book And as you're talking to your friends about how we helped you set up your retirement and your plan, would you just hand them a copy of my book and say, well, Lynn's the person we trust with our finances. You should just read her book. Would you do that for me, Wes? Absolutely.
Yeah, nobody's going to say no to that.
So you start letting your happy clients tell their friends, neighbors, relatives, business owners, church members about you. Now you're getting a referral who coming to you with very high trust and a copy of your book. Do you think that's going to make any difference?
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. Like in my business, a referral is worth 10x what, a lead from the podcast or,
Yeah.
stuff I'm putting up on LinkedIn or, there's places you can go and buy leads basically,
Right.
and which I stopped doing years ago, but, because the quality's just not there,
Yeah.
versus that referral that comes from someone that, I've spent time with, whether they ended up getting into a franchise or not. If they had good experience with me, felt like I was trustworthy, knowledgeable,
Right.
added value to them, that referral, they come up, you've already got credibility with them. They already have a pretty good understanding of what you do and how you may be able to help.
Yeah.
So I could see that, with having the book, I could see that being a great way to kind of intentionally, or I should say proactively drive more referral business. Cause that's something that I've struggled with over the years. Like I get a fair number of referrals, but it's usually more reactive. Like I couldn't tell you as we
Right.
sit here today, I'm going to get X number of referrals in July.
Right.
We're recording this at the end of June. Like I
Yeah.
don't know. I hope it's 5 or more. That'd be
Yeah.
great, but could be 1, could be 0,
Absolutely.
So something that is kind of a lever that you can pull on to drive more of that is huge. And then I'm sure there's all types of stuff, with
Oh,
social media, that you're able to do to incorporate the book and to drive awareness. So you mentioned giving it away for free, which makes total sense for me. One question I did have for you though, like, are any of your clients actually making money, like, money worth speaking of off the sales of their books?
yeah. No.
Yeah.
Well, not on Amazon. So I've got one client. He came with me. He published his book in 2014. He still
Okay.
gets checks from Amazon. So people are buying it, but I mean, they're like $100 here and there. Um, you're going to make your money not on Amazon sales, but on
Right.
gaining clients. I've got one
Sure.
client who's in the technology world, and he works for like Cisco, and I mean he comes into their conferences and speaks. When he goes into a conference to speak, he gets paid to speak, but they also buy hundreds of copies of his book to give out to everybody. So in that aspect, he's making money selling it.
Sure.
But the money is in the new clients.
Yeah.
That's what you need to focus on. So that's
For
what our
for
focus.
sure. I was
Yeah, no,
curious if
great
like
question.
it was something that, was maybe an added benefit, right? A little
Yeah.
icing on the cake that you get
Yeah.
some extra money from the book revenue.
It's coffee money, man. It's coffee
Sure.
money.
Yeah, makes total sense though. Give us, if you don't mind, I mean, you don't have to give like names but like
Yeah.
what are some of the biggest success stories that you've seen in terms of, because you mentioned this kind of double your money guarantee. And I
Yeah.
don't know if you're comfortable, talking pricing or anything like that, but just
Sure.
give us some examples of like some really big success stories that you've seen, and the types of revenue that clients have been able to bring in as a result of the book.
Yeah. So investment wise, I mean, we're anywhere from a low end of like 18,000 up
Yeah.
to about 36,000.
Okay.
And we've got financing options and 0% and all that stuff. But if you're a business owner investing to grow your business, we're super affordable to get that done. Number one. Number two, we do back it up with a 2-year guarantee. But success, the first guy that comes to my mind, Brad Pistol, I've mentioned him. He's in Missouri as a financial advisor. He was doing a radio program, and he was giving away somebody else's book, right? And that was his call to action. And he was just struggling. It wasn't working well. He called me. He says, Michael, I want to do my own book. We created his book, Safe Money Matters. And these are his words. I mean, almost instantly when he started giving away his book, his business started growing. And here's the deal: when you create your own book, it gives you more confidence
Yeah, I
in
could see that.
who you are and what you do, so that you speak differently. And he, on his radio show, says, "Hey, get a free copy of my book." People would call him, he'd mail them a free copy of my book, just like a Lynn did, right? People read his book, they walk in. Brad told me this was 3 years ago. He'd finished his 5th record year in a row, and he would attribute, I got him on video testimony, he attributes it to the book and his radio show. He's like, if you took the book away from me, I'd be scared to think where my business would be today.
Wow.
Because he knows the impact of not only clients, but his clients come to him and say, "Hey, Brad, we know a couple of people at work. Can we get a couple books, copies of your book to give out to them?" And Brad's standard answer is, "Absolutely. Would you like 5 or 10?"
Yeah. Not a
So
couple, 5 or
yeah.
10. We're
So
doing 5 packs and 10 packs over here.
absolutely. So he told me, he's like, in the last few years, he's ordered from us 1,100 copies of his book to give out. He said, of those 1,100 that he's given out, probably about 300 became clients.
Wow.
He said the ROI on that, commissions and everything, where he said would be like 40 times what I invested in the book.
That's incredible.
And he's just starting, honestly. I mean, he's got a long way to go in business because he's at my age. The return on investment is unbelievable because you've created an asset that you're going to use over and over and over and over and over and over.
That's the really interesting thing about this. We in one of our businesses in particularly, we have a pretty robust, advertising budget every month, and we've got really good metrics that kind of allow us to track where we're investing our marketing dollars, how much we're investing, and what the different marketing channels are generating for us, right? So ultimately that gives us a pretty accurate ROI on our marketing dollars by channel. And then, we've got a ROI overall. So, we learned early on in that business, like, you got to look at marketing as an investment, not as an expense. But, a lot of the digital stuff that you're doing, we in that particular business, we do some direct mail, which still works really well in that particular business, at least. But that's like short term. We're going to pay, if we pay, $2,000 to be in a Val pack, for July, that's not going to probably yield much for us beyond July unless we pay another $2,000 to be in Valpak again in August. There could be some lagging stuff, but it's not as likely. Like, those are more short-term, repetitive marketing investments.
It is. So let's take that and let's put a book into that same thing, Valpak or whatever you're doing, right? And I'm gonna change the business to a heating and air conditioning company, HVAC.
Yeah.
Why would they ever do a book? So we did one for a guy, right? And in his perspective, as I talked, I mean, he deals with energy efficiency of your house.
Yeah.
That's their thing. So we created his book. It's called The 7 Energy Thieves. That's the title of his book. So how about you do a Valpak direct mail thing, and instead of saying get a free air conditioner when you buy a heater today, I'm not in the market. How about get a free copy of my book, 7 Energy Thieves, and learn how to save $1,000 a year on your energy bill.
There you go.
And you drive them to a website to get a free copy of your book with their name and email. Now they're on your list. Now you've got something to market long term.
Yeah.
So that's just one strategy of how to use direct mail to drive them from offline to online, because that offer for that consumer is a lot more compelling than get a free air conditioner with a heater today or whatever.
Well, and it's different too, right? Because every HVAC company's, offering the free estimate, the, whatever the perk is for
and if
writing
you
the check today.
Yeah. And if you bump that just a tad in that direct mail piece, a picture of you standing by your van, your HVAC van that they're going to see around the community, But then when they go to that landing page, there's you and your van and your book. It starts branding you because, again, people buy you. How do you choose an HVAC company? Google?
Yeah. Or
No, no, no,
whoever
no.
answers the phone and calls you back and
Yeah, no. I want to
shows
build a
up on time.
relationship. I want to be the first person you think of and the one you feel the best about when you are ready to make that decision to create
Yeah.
a book, to buy an HVAC AC system, or to buy a franchise.
Well, look, we own an insulation business, which is energy efficiency too. So maybe we need to do the 8 steps to eliminate energy thieves and save $1,200 a year.
Absolutely. Yeah, because it's a totally different message. And then then you start educating your prospect, and an educated buyer is always a better buyer. And so
Look,
it's
let,
totally right.
let me ask you this. And I don't know that there's a good way to like track this with certainty, but out of talking to your clients, do they get the sense that like the majority of people that get a free copy of their book do actually sit down and read it?
The way they judge that, I don't know if the majority do or not, but the way they judge that is when they get emails or people coming in their office with their book with sticky notes. Brad Pistol, the financial advisor, people walk in with sticky notes going, okay, now Brad, in this chapter you talked about annuities. Help me understand that, or whatever. So at the end of the day, all right, so if they read all of your book, awesome. Your book is your best business card to get them engaged with you.
Yeah. In my mind, it's almost like it doesn't matter if they read the book. If they do, that's like bonus. That's a highly, highly engaged person.
Yeah.
But it's more just the credibility piece. You're establishing yourself as an expert. You're differentiating yourself.
And you're telling your story. So the first chapter of your book probably is going to be the story that connects to, why am I referee? What's that about, right?
Yeah.
Because again, that's what bonds me. Now, take this. When we create your book, Wes, we're going to put QR codes in different chapters that connect them back to your website where you're doing a video. You might be on the playground with your kids doing a video about the value of owning a franchise is it gives you time freedom. And the reason I'm on the playground with my kids today is because I've got a franchise that works for me and I can be investing time with my kids. I would love to help you do the same thing. If that's of interest to you, let's schedule a call and talk about you out of your book QR code. So that's how we think about creating your book. It's got to be marketing centric. And how do you connect at a heartfelt level with your audience? That's how you create something that's going to be powerful long term.
Yeah. I like how you're kind of tying it into whatever other assets someone may have out there, website, podcast,
100%.
because that I could see that being a fairly common maybe pushback that you get is like, well, it's 2023, why do I need a book? I do a podcast, I put up YouTube videos, I'm on all the social media platforms, like who's still doing books? But I think you've done a pretty good job today illustrating why it absolutely makes sense. And it's not like, hey, stop all that other stuff. It's just incorporate a book into this kind of ecosystem that you're building. Because the way I've kind of come to think about our businesses is like we want to just get someone into our ecosystem.
Absolutely.
Right? So get them on our mailing list, right? Get them on our YouTube channel, get them on the podcast, get them, to where they're getting exposed fairly often. And because especially in the franchise consulting, right? I mean, it is no small thing to decide, hey, I'm going to invest all this money and start a business, because it's not only a significant amount of money, it's a life-changing decision, right? Like and there's franchises out there that are kind of designed for like the corporate executive that has a good gig, wants to keep that gig, but likes the idea of an additional income stream and building an asset. And, they've kind of developed this skill set through climbing the corporate ranks that translates well to that type of an ownership model, but still life-changing decision in terms of just more responsibility, more to think about, obviously tons of potential benefits, but there's also downside. There's no guarantees in owning a business. There's just all these things that need to go into it. So the point I'm getting at is, like, there's a lot of people that I have great conversations with. We spend some time working together, and the conclusion is this could be great for me at some point, but not right now. Right. So I need that person to stay in my ecosystem, right? So that they're getting a steady dose of Wes, right? So that when the time is right, there's no question who they're reaching out to.
That's right. And one of the best ways to do that is to incorporate your book on all the things, because once you have your book, like a Lynn, if she ever wants to post something on YouTube, social media, all she has to do is go to her book and talk about it. Say, hey, in chapter 3 of my book, I talk about this, blah, 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 right? Get a free copy of my website. Now, here's the thing. Somebody requests that free copy on your website. That's awesome. Ebooks are great. But I want you to offer them a free physical copy too, because I look over here on my bookshelf and I see you have a bookshelf. Books hang around. And when they're going to forget what you told them on the sales call. They really are. They're going to forget your video. They're going to go, oh, but they're going to go intrigued, and they're going to go, I want to read that again. So over time, they're going to see you as a resource, and then they're going to go back to your YouTube channel and re-listen or see your email and go, oh yeah, because your book beckons to them every time they see it on the bookshelf. It's just subconscious. It's really cool. That's one reason I love physical books. And I say, put your book in the hands of every living human being in your audience.
Yeah, that makes sense. I love having books. I've got a book, probably 2,000. I don't know if it's that many, but 1,000 plus books. And I want to keep building my collection of books. I am weird though, because I've gotten to where I like to listen to my books now. I'm a big Audible guy, but I will sometimes buy the hard copy just to put it on the shelf and remind me that I have that book.
Absolutely.
Right? But then I'll listen to it. It's kind of
and once your book's done, Wes, we can help you create that audiobook. That's something that we do as well, because you're right. A lot of people like to, especially busy entrepreneurs, we like to listen as we're doing something else because it's time efficient.
Yeah.
But it's hard to highlight and underline an audiobook. So
that's very hard.
Both of them are great, but we help you create the audiobook as well.
Yeah. Okay. Good to know. Well, hey man, I'm watching the time. I know you're busy as well. This is fascinating to me. I could, keep picking your brain on this stuff all day long, but we'll have you come back on. You and I have talked, and I think, doing the book makes a lot of sense for, me with Path to Freedom. So, we may set that in motion a little bit later this year. So, assuming we do that, we'll have you come back on at some point, and, you can tell the audience how that's going, how I'm doing on my end of it. But, and then we can maybe at some point talk about some results. But I think it's really cool, what you're doing. And I think, really eye-opening. I know for me, and so I imagine the audience, the same, just how many business owners out there could benefit from actually having a book and, using it strategically to build relationships and drive more business. So, before we wrap this up, where can people connect with you? Where can people learn more if they're interested in, talking to you about having a book done for themselves? How can they get to you?
Paperbackexpert.com. That's
Easy
the website.
enough.
That is the central hub of all things Michael. So paperbackexpert.com.
I love it. We'll put it in the show notes, make it easy for people to get to. But Michael DeLon, thank you so much. Appreciate everything that you're doing out there to help small business owners. Keep up the great work.
Thanks, Wes. I appreciate it. Great to be here. Thanks.